How's it going? My name is Jonathan and welcome back. In this video, we are actually going to be talking about cycles, cycle theory, and the exact cycle that we're looking at on Bitcoin right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save you the hassle. I'm going to switch over to the chart right now, and we're going to be taking a look at the cycle on Bitcoin. So what I have right here is, I should say Excel sheet because we're not using a chart right here. I've got an Excel sheet right here, and this is the current cycle length that I've been calculating for Bitcoin now. Before we move over to the actual Bitcoin price, I'm actually just going to walk you through what exactly we're looking at and what this means for you as we come into August, okay? So I've been tracking a current cycle on Bitcoin, and I believe the cycle averages around 13 weeks. And that's coming up to around 90 days, okay? So currently on the left-hand side, we have our cycle, we have a start date, end date, and how many weeks that cycle occurred over. And if we start on the left-hand side and we can move down the list, we can see that we've currently calculated 27 cycles and we're moving into our 28th right now. So what we have here is we have a cycle that starts mid-January 2015 and it ends around 16th of April 2015. Okay, so that's around 13 weeks. That was our first low to low. Now, when it comes to calculating cycles, we want to be generally calculating cycles from low to low. Well, WD Gann would have calculated cycles, or at least time cycles, I should say, which were used and calculated from low to low, high to low, low to high, high to low. But in this instance, we're using a technique taught by Ray Merriman, and we'll be going from low to low. And we wanted to see, in this instance, how many times did we get a cycle repeating, and what accuracy or what chance do we have of that cycle repeating again? So what we do is we go all the low to lows, at least all the low to other major lows, and we calculate out, and we try to find out how many weeks in are the cycles coming a low to low period. And we've got a total data sample right now of 331 weeks, which if we average it all up is around 12 and a half weeks per cycle. Now that gives us an orb period. Now I won't exactly explain what an orb is, but in short, it's a period of time before and after the cycle. So that gives us a orb period of 10 to 14 weeks. And what we want to know is how many times out of this data sample did Bitcoin average a cycle length from low to low between 10 to 14 weeks. And at the moment, we've got an accuracy of around 74%. So 74% of the time, Bitcoin is making another important low, or at least a higher low or lower low. 74% of the times out of the times it goes through this 90-day or 90 trading period cycle. So that's interesting in of itself. And now as we add more samples to this, we'll be able to get a more accurate reading. But what we want to do here is we just wanted to know exactly what accuracy is and if this cycle is playing out. Now there's obviously different cycles that we're analyzing, such as the yearly cycle, monthly cycles, and even going out to the like 4-year cycles, what we're going to be analyzing soon. There's a lot of data to put into this, but this is just one I wanted to show you today. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back in time. And we're now just going to take a look at where we began, and I just want to explain to you what's occurred. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a low, and this is the low we started to count from because at the time point, I thought it was a pretty important low given that the market had rolled over. Of course, you can start counting from here and going out. We might even find out that if we continue counting from here, this low will come up anyway. So I just picked this low just to begin with. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to go out to another semi-important low. So this one here, if we counted it out 90 days, we can see that we start to get this period here, which is another important low because the market's come up and it's moved down and then it started to trend up again. So that's our first cycle. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. I will go several ahead just to show you. Okay, let's start from this one. So what we have here is we have an important low, and what we're going to do is we're going to be counting out, and then that gives us a period here where we can watch for another important low. Now this low doesn't look very important right now because the chart is squished up. If I go ahead and just make it normal again, we can see that price, if we go ahead and clean it, price moved higher, and then into our orb period, it fell. Now that decline there in price was around 10%. So it's not a dramatic decline, but it is an important low, and that's a low that we wanted to be watching nonetheless. And what happens if we start moving forward? Well, whilst this low here didn't look important, if we take this low and we move forward in time, what we can see is that we have another low here. And this period here, again, would have been 91 days. Now, we've got to take into consideration our orb period. So our orb period, or our cycle period in essence, would tell us that from low to low, we should be looking for another major low within a period of time of the last low. Now, the whole theory behind cycle analysis and things like that is that there's wheels within wheels and there's cycles within cycles. So if we started to count from this low, and then we wanted to wait to make sure that we get something within this time period here, well, we can see a pretty dramatic low in the market here before the next market rally. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to try and focus where possible on the research of where lows were occurring, and I wanted to continue counting from them. So even though I've started to suggest that this was the start and the end of the cycle, it doesn't mean that this cycle was wrong, because I've calculated this cycle already in the Excel sheet. So if it's less than 91 days or less than 13 weeks or goes outside the 10 to 15 weeks, whatever it is, that's being calculated here. So it already knows that it's wrong. I could have gone for a simpler low that was within the orb period, but I thought, why not just focus on the major lows, because that's going to give us greater clarity moving forward. So as you do this, try to just apply the art to it and not so much the science, okay? So now if we go out from this one and we move forward in time, we can see that we get another important low, at least a low that's been triggered on this chart within the orb period moving forwards, and we also have another low here that fell just outside that orb period. So there's another time period to watch. And we could just keep going on, and we'll see if we keep going out, we keep getting important lows around this orb period. And sometimes, just remember, sometimes the lows don't go outside the orb period, don't go inside the orb period, sorry. I have marked them as wrong, and I have started to calculate from what I believe is an important low, moving 91 days out from there, and we get another important low, get another important low, and so forth. So I've tried to not bastardize the analysis, so to speak, but I've tried to definitely make sure that I focus on the important lows and count out from there. So that brings us to where we are today. Now, the last important low, which was ending the cycle, was this one here. And then we count 90 days out, and then that gives us our lows that occurred in May. And potentially, if you wanted to get real specific, you could say that this is incorrect and you want to go for this low. Either way, depending on where you're going to calculate from, we need to be looking for a low in the May to June period. And then we have another low, which is expected in August. Now, this is where this gets important, because I want to know where exactly this low is going to occur. And I want to know if it's going to be above or below the last low. So this is our period here where we're watching. Any move below that is going to be below the low. And any low that occurs up here is, technically speaking, a higher low. So how do we actually know if we're going to get a higher low or a lower low? Now, there's no guarantee in this theory, because this is all about probability, and that's what trading is about. But if we can build a case and we follow the rules that Ray Merriman set out, well, Ray Merriman would have suggested if we get a low here and we're watching for a forecasted low over here, we want to know that midpoint between the cycle. And we want to know if we're going to get a left or a right translation top. So what that means in simpleton terms is this. This midpoint here is important to watch because it gives us an indication on what could occur next. If the market makes a peak on the left-hand side and then travels down, so anywhere on the left-hand side, so anywhere on the left-hand side of that, and travels down into the right-hand side, that increases the probability of a right-hand side lower low. On the contrary, if we get a midpoint, let's draw that a bit more. If we get a midpoint at, so the market sort of moves up like this, and a peak over here, that gives us a higher probability that the market is going to find a higher low. So you sort of see that's what we're looking for right now. We want to know if this is the top and the market's going to trend down into a lower low, or is the market now going to rally up onto the right hand side of this midpoint, break above the top that it made over here, fall lower, and then make a higher low. That's pretty much the key, and that is what I'm watching for, and that is what I think is important right now. Bitcoin needs to rally, and it needs to break that point there anywhere within this period here. If it can do that, then that increases the probability of a higher August low, which would then increase the probability there on out of a rally into the end of the year. So as always, if you learned something today, go ahead and leave a comment and also hit that like button. If you have any questions, I'm here to help. If you want to use any of the analysis that you learned today, please reference sources, myself, Ray Merriman, and anyone else you're learning cycles analysis from. We're all here to help each other, so don't be afraid of actually giving credit where credit is due. I always try to do it. With that said, look forward to talking to you soon.